So, welcome to the next episode of my podcast where I interview art practitioners based in Birmingham. And today I've got the pleasure to speak to Dean Melbourne. Have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. So you are an art coach, aren't you? Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about that role and what does it involve? What is it all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I settled on the name of coach, although I'm still not absolutely convinced that that's spot on. I used the word mentor for quite a while, and consultant for a little while. And I think what I do is something that's in between all of those roles, really. I learned that people Google coaching more than they Google mentor. I have worked in various roles for the last 25 years alongside being an artist in various education roles, and I've been just really lucky to pick up lots of really great tools, both for artists in terms of practice but also in terms of career as well, in terms of developing career, strategizing, making plans. I've been freelance for about 4 or 5 years, and more people were kind of asking for hints or tips. So I kind of formalized the business about a year ago into kind of a more formal practice, and it's been great. So I work with artists who are at varying stages, and thanks to technology, they're all around the country. So I have people that are just emerging, say, from PhDs or MAs, emerging out of that back into civilian life and trying to build a practice. I have people who are returning to their practice after their children have grown and they're now, they've perhaps not practiced for 20 years. Yeah, so a real broad range of people with a broad range of challenges, but lots of commonality between the clients actually as well.
So why do you think people look for an art coach? Why is it something that anyone would be interested in?
Well, being an artist or a creative or making a business in the arts, we're just required to be able to do so much on our own, to be able to not only produce high quality work that's authentic and intelligent and has a real sense of personal exploration, but also to make sure that we're seen in the right way, to build relationships, to build professional relationships, to cope with finances, to make sure we complete tax returns. We kind of have to do it all, right? So if you were an athlete, you would have some help with that. You'd have someone to help with your diet. You'd have someone to help with your training technique. You'd have someone to look at your form. But as artists, when we're out of academia, generally, we're really on our own. And I think that sometimes people just need an outside view without committing to doing an MA or signing up to a really expensive course. They just need someone to maybe look at their work or listen to a problem and offer an outside perspective. My sessions are £60 for 90 minutes, and sometimes I do one-offs about very specific things. So I've recently worked with someone who was making an application to a course, needed a one-off session to help practice interview because there's some difficulty with English as their second language. And then other clients I've been working with since my business started regularly. So there's a real flexibility that means that you can opt in and out when you need to. 90% of the people that I work with are women, and lots of the work that I do is about confidence and a sense of permission, really, to pursue their thing seriously when they're not getting support in their immediate environment. So they're looking for some support and sometimes even just some deadlines and someone to be answerable to.
Someone to motivate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes in many forms. Sometimes they just need to hear that they have some ability and what they're doing isn't a waste of time. Sometimes they know that they're not being as productive as they should be, and they kind of like to have someone to make them accountable for that.
Last time I interviewed Janika Ok, who runs a similar offer for artists, a similar business. And in my discussion with her, I sort of had a feeling and understanding that she's very much focused on business development, so like the business side of artistic practice. Not only, but I think that was quite strong element of her business.
Sure.
Do you have a similar angle, or is it a bit different with your coaching?
Yeah, I know Janika quite well, and my understanding is that her angle is slightly leans more towards the kind of nuts and bolts of art business, and I would say that mine's probably a little more kind of neutral. The conversations tend to be split 50-50. Some people really want to talk about the studio and the work being made and developing that and developing their contextual understanding of what they're doing, technically developing, exploring new ideas. And then others are trying to navigate the financial aspect of being an artist. We work on the business, but I'm not a business coach. I look at strategy a lot. I ask people to get very clear on what their idea of success is. And I have no prejudgment on what the right answer to that is. It's different for everyone. But I encourage people to get very, very clear on that. Once we are clear on that, we plan backwards from that to figure out the best route to get as close as we can to that. So there is some business conversation in that. So I talk to people about pricing work and building relationships with gallerists, galleries, clients, depending on their business model. Sometimes I can work with a client for a year and it's all about the studio. And then we get to a point where the business conversation starts to become relevant, or vice versa. So I just ask people to explain where they are now, how they got there, and what their frustration is. Usually by the time they get to me, they're very clear that there is a frustration, otherwise they wouldn't be looking for some help. So I just have to figure out what that frustration is, and then I do a little bit of detective work to figure out what's preventing them from making progress. But my offer is always very clear. Let's get very clear on what we're trying to work towards. Let's look at some of the things that may be problems that either may be behavioral, so self-limiting beliefs, or even practical habits that are just stopping progress being made. And then let's build a strategy to move towards the goal. I guess my most exciting progression stories, really. I was lucky enough to work with the amazing Birmingham-based artist Susan Cruz. It was a real great example of how mutually beneficial a relationship can be as well, because she was fantastically experienced anyway, and I learned a lot from her. But she was low on confidence, really, which was all that had happened. She was frustrated, not making progress. Her practice was great, and she's intelligent and knows exactly what her values were. And all she really needed was someone to sit and look at the work and maybe say, this needs tweaking, or this needs tweaking, but let's just up the production rate. And we developed a really great relationship very quickly. And since then, she had her first solo show. She was successful in 2 Arts Council applications, I think. She's now a fellow at BOM in Birmingham and working on a year-long fellowship project. Her practice has changed and evolved. So that was a very rewarding, and still is. And now I don't mentor her anymore. In fact, we're now friends, and I would say that she helps me as much as I help her. So I work with a lady still who is down in Brighton, and she's wanted to pursue an art career most of her life, and her children are grown now, and she just didn't feel like she had permission to. I think she didn't know whether she was good, or not, and it's not so much a success story in terms of financial success, but she's just taken on her first studio space, seeing her personal growth, changing the way she speaks, and hair's changed. So just seeing her confidence grow, it's just hugely rewarding. And again, very talented painter. Just needed someone to say, yeah, this is good, let's keep doing that. Sometimes the successes are people get funding, or they get onto a course, and it's very tangible. And sometimes it's just seeing people evolve, really.
So do you sometimes also help people writing Arts Council applications?
Well, no, I don't. Well, I help people develop projects because I have a rough strategic understanding of what makes a good project, or what makes a fundable project. I'm not a funding application writer though, and I'm very clear on that. I'm very upfront with my clients about things that I don't do, but I have a bunch of really great people that I refer to, and they're the people that I go to for help on those things as well. So, for example, I have a client who needed to do the lady that needed to do interview practice. Interview practice is fine for me because we can do this, and I feel very comfortable with that. But statement writing, I gave her my opinion, but I also passed it on to someone else.
So would you be able to give some advice for an artist in general, who would like to progress with their art practice?
Everyone needs some different advice because of their situation. But some things that I think all artists benefit from: to be as clear as you can about what it is you're trying to achieve and why, and to be as honest with yourself about that as possible. There are quite a lot of unsaid, well, sometimes they're said as well, but unsaid kind of rules in the art world. So being seen to be keen to sell work sometimes people that do that can be made to feel like they're not authentic. First of all, you have to develop some strength around what you are trying to do, and be very clear about it. And once you've done that, if you're a emerging artist, and it doesn't matter about your age, but in terms of how long you've been practicing, if you are a young artist, then put in the time in the studio, and while you're doing that, build some relationships outside of the studio. If you're based in a city like Birmingham or Bristol or Manchester or wherever you're based, and you've been there a little while, and maybe you studied there and you know the scene quite well, I would really encourage people to step out of that city and go somewhere else. Not to live or to work, but to build some relationships. Because my experience is that within a locality, a certain culture or conversation will dominate. And for the people that live in that environment, that can often be quite negative. It can get to a point of people talking about why things don't happen. The conversation gets kind of cyclical, but what happens when you step out and say, as a Birmingham artist, you go to Bristol, is that your conversation's new, your perspective's new, you're not saying the same old thing. You tend to look, even the work tends to look and feel different. So I would really encourage people to do that. Step out of your town or even your city. Put some time in on your art form. Get clear on what you're trying to do. Get strategic about it, and build some relationships. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about approaching art galleries by artists?
It's a really difficult question, isn't it? And often people think that once you get a gallery or you're signed by a gallery, that's it. But of course, those relationships come and go, galleries come and go. So there isn't a finite point of being kind of in the door, as it were, and you're in and that's it. Again, it depends on the stage that you're at, and it depends on the type of gallery. A relationship with the gallery in some way before you apply or send in work is really helpful. And there are a number of ways that you can build relationships with galleries or curators. I made the mistake for 15 years of thinking that the only way to build relationships with them was to go to their private views and turn up on those nights and with everyone else. maybe hope to get a minute with the gallerist, and hope that out of all of the 200 people in the room that they would, you know, somehow like me more than everybody else. And that's great. And, you know, being an audience member is important, and being a viewer of the work and being seen there, but there's no place to build relationships. Gallerists are busy, they're working hard to represent the artists that are in the show. So it's not the best time. But what is cool is to, at the right time, ask for help. I use a running analogy all of the time in coaching, but if you put in the miles on your work, people will notice. Putting the miles in on your work means that you can quite legitimately give a gallery a call, which I always think is better than an email, if I'm honest, and say, you know, I've been working on this work for 3, 4, 5 years. I think it's getting somewhere, and I feel quite an affinity to your gallery and what you do. I wondered if there's any way that you could take a look at it. And don't do that with a view of trying to get in the gallery. Do that with a view of genuinely trying to get some feedback from that curator or gallerist about what your work is missing or lacking. So for me, I've always been a huge fan of a particular gallery in London called Charlie Smith London. I really like Xavier that runs it. I really like the way that the atmosphere of the gallery and the artists that he shows. And it's always been a little kind of dream of mine to show there, and I still haven't. When I was lucky enough to get some funding money to get mentoring myself, and I called him and said, I think my work is relevant to you, but I know it's not good enough yet. But I don't know what the gap is between me and the people that you're showing. Will you mentor me? And of course I had some money to pay him, and he did. And I found out what the gap was. And now it's maybe 9 years since then. And I've got a really great relationship with Xavier now. I can call him. In fact, I started a small gallery project in Stourbridge, and I borrowed work from Charlie Smith Gallery, which is just incredible to be able to pick the phone up to someone like that. So the relationship hasn't meant that I've shown at that gallery, but it means that I'm in that conversation, and that's so valuable. So yeah, be nice to people. Say you need help. Be honest. Cold emails, I would probably avoid. They tend to get ignored, and they make you feel bad. When, you know, it makes you feel bad when you don't hear back from people.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about how do you find your clients, or how do they find you?
I get some clients referred. Other clients are people that I've known for quite a long time. I've worked on quite a lot of development programs in Birmingham. I know lots of people that run arts organisations in the Midlands, and there are people that now they hear that I'm coaching independently are coming to me for some support. And then it's referrals, really. You know, generally, I work with someone and they tell someone else that I was helpful. if I was.
Way,
and yeah, so that's the best way, actually. I really like it when that happens.
Yeah. I'm very curious about your own practice, and how do you marry those two aspects? So in being an artist yourself and also coaching other artists, and do you take on board the advice that you give other people? Do you address it yourself, and how do you put it into practice?
Well, you know, I've tried pretty much every combination that you can try. After graduating, I became a lecturer at FE level. So I taught for 3 days a week and had a 2-day-a-week practice on the weekends. I found that really exhausting. I was teaching from A level up to HND level. Because I'm kind of a sponge, and I tend to absorb from the people that I'm around a lot, my work looked like A level work. I just couldn't. So that was tiring, and it didn't work. And from there I went to work in museum sector. I did that for about 4 years. And again, working 3 days a week, practicing. And that was better in a way. Then I was a consultant at a really small consultancy in Birmingham called Creative Shift. In fact, we were a 2-person business, so I worked there again 3 days a week in the office, and my practice was 2 days a week. And that was probably the least art-based job that I'd had, but was probably the best match to my practice. So my practice did quite well with that. In fact, it was in that scenario that I eventually started working with a gallery, and in the end just had to leave that because I got offered a solo show and I didn't have time to make the work unless I left my job. So I'd gambled and doing that. And then I remained freelance for a while, doing facilitation work and kind of courses. And then I just painted for a while. Things were going really well. I was making, selling and showing work quite regularly for about 4 or 5 years. And at the time I thought that was great, actually. But I now realise that probably was quite damaging to my practice in some ways. And now the balance that I have is that I have a business that I'm very much in control of for the first time. I probably don't earn as much money as I did as a lecturer, or but I'm not reliant on someone else giving me work. And that's always very scary to me when someone else has that power and you're reliant on financial crashes or viruses, or I'm in control of my own kind of financial destiny. And I always had a little entrepreneurial itch, really, to start my own business. I always really wanted to try and do that. So yeah, and it works really well with my art practice now. I have really good conversations that really fuel the work. I work in very short bursts, which suits me. So my sessions are an hour and a half. I tend to write the notes immediately after. So it's kind of a 2-hour little slot and it's done and I can do something else. And that works much better for me than sitting at a desk for 8 hours for a whole day and then being in the studio for a whole day.
What is your practice, your artistic practice?
So, yeah, I mean, up until the last year, I would say, it's been very clear that I would always say I'm a painter. My identity has been built around being a painter. But that's kind of changed in the last little while, and I am painting still, but I went through some personal difficulties and got very interested as a result in Jungian psychotherapy. As a result of that, I got very interested in alchemy, and I've always been interested in mythology. So I have an art partner who, her name's Chantal Powell, and she lives down in Dorset, and she's a sculptor, installation artist. And we kind of work collaboratively together, but at a distance. We did a year of research, working with a Jungian analyst and spending some time at the Wellcome collection and looking at alchemical documents from the 15th century, 16th century. That research phase of kind of almost 2 years, I guess, is now starting to become work. And there is some painting, and I make prints, and there's a little bit more kind of performative practice as well, kind of taking on characters and costumes. So I have a couple of alter egos. I make little sculptures sometimes now. So my practice has kind of broadened quite a lot. Yeah, it's exciting. So our project is called Night Shaking. Hopefully, post-virus, it will start to emerge into the real world a little bit more.
Well, I can't wait to see the outcomes of your project. Could you tell me a little bit about your day structure? How does your typical day look like?
Well, of course, that's been kind of thrown up in the air a little bit at the moment. I tend to let my clients shape my week. So people book in sessions and then I work around them. So maybe I do 5 or 6 sessions in a week and they're dotted through days, and I can look at that and it leaves slots either side of those. And then I fill those with either my writing practice, or I'm doing lots of dream analysis, or I'm in the studio.
So do you always meet them via internet, or is it sometimes face-to-face?
It's sometimes face-to-face. Normally I start with a little phone call. Ideally, then we would meet in person, either somewhere neutral or in their studio space, and spend some time together physically, looking at the stuff, looking at the work. Generally after that, the sessions are Zoom or FaceTime.
So in a way, this coronavirus situation is nothing new to you in terms of Zoom meetings. So this is your daily practice anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I have to get to people's studios because, you know, photographs won't do in terms of seeing the work, apart from those times. And of course, my clients that are in Birmingham, I see in person. This technology is so wonderful. Even clients that I have that have been very skeptical about whether it can work using this tech have found it wonderful. Practical thing that I never realised about it was that once the session's done, you're still at home. So you don't have to get home. And getting to and from meetings was just taking up so much of my life. I actually have an illness that means that I get tired very quickly. I have an arthritis condition. And I realised that a 1 hour meeting in Birmingham for me to come into the city centre and back that could take 2 days from me. So this technology is wonderful for that. People realise that they can be more flexible, and employers can be more flexible around people with illness, people with disability, parenting issues, you know, childcare issues, and even, you know, just to stop people getting in cars as often would be great. So hopefully we learn something, but
Yeah.
You never know.
What do you think about networking? Do you do a lot of networking yourself, and is it something you advise people to do?
Yes, it's essential, but I don't call it networking. Try not to. So actually I teach networking. Most of my work with Creative Shift, the little consultancy, was with the lady that ran that was called Helga Henry. She and a friend of hers who's an academic and a consultant actually literally wrote a book on building business relationships. So I was really lucky to be around as they developed that. So I teach that system, and the idea of turning it into a system means that it's not based on personality. It's not based on whether you're really comfortable in a room or you can host or you can do that face-to-face stuff. If you're shy, there's a way to network for you that will work. So I teach that as a system, and it's a very, very straightforward idea, really. And at the heart of it is the idea that instead of networking, which kind of implies getting things from people, the idea of this is that deciding who you want to build a relationship with is perfectly acceptable. People don't like the idea of being strategic about business relationships. They think that in some way, if you're thinking ahead, that it's a little bit kind of unethical. But I think being very clear about who you like to meet and talk to is perfectly okay. The notion that holds this whole system together is that you give some value, and that probably will mean that you will get some value back. But you start with giving. The way that works in practical terms is, say you're at an event and you meet someone who turns out to be, I don't know, maybe they curate something that you're really interested in and you'd like to have another conversation. If you have a genuine conversation with that person and you ask good questions and you listen more than you talk, they will tell you things about themselves that mean that you can give value. They'll tell you what books they read or what countries they're interested in or anything. It could be where they like to eat. And given modern technology, it's so easy now to give people value, to follow someone on Twitter and say, you were talking about these kinds of books. Do you know about this one? Did you read this article? And send it. You know that idea that you used to pop things in an envelope and write, I saw this and thought of you? That's so easy these days. And I always say to people, think about what you can offer as value to other people. And the smallest bit of value that you can offer is being nice. Be nice. Leave people feeling better than when they met you, not worse. Listen, that's free. Ask questions. People love to be asked questions. But lots of us, we're so hungry for what we're trying to achieve that we wanted to talk about us. But that can come later. But just be nice to people. Be interested in them. And it might not be quick. It has to be organic and slow. It's a little bit like gardening. You can't plant a seed and then about 5 minutes later go and dig it up again and see how it's going. You have to wait. But yeah, definitely, be nice, be interested, be interesting, share things.
Thank you so much. I think this was my last question. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with me and with the listeners, with the viewers. Yeah, so I think that's it for that episode of my podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. Really good.
Thank you.
Thank you.